Hello and welcome to our fourth Foodbuy Futures event on innovation and diversification. I'm Jonathan Wright, I'm the Supply Chain Director here at Foodbuy, and I'll be hosting today's discussion. Foodbuy are a Greek procurement organisation that manages over £1 billion through a network of our supply partners for our clients. And Foodbuy Futures is a series of panel discussions that bring together influential business leaders from our network of suppliers and clients to discuss topics affecting our food industry today. Through the series, we're going to provide you with future tips and insights to not only survive but thrive through this crisis. Given this time of such change and uncertainty, how we adapt, innovate and diversify will be key to future success. And I'm really pleased to be joined by our panel today who'll be able to share how they are leading the way in their field. So to introduce our panel, from Foodbuy, you're Sophie Daniels, Category Director for Food and Retail. Rupert Hodges, Executive Director at Orate. Charlotte Wood, VP of Marketing at Feeder. Oliver Ringsby Burgess, Group Managing Director at HPS Cleaning Services. Jamal Izel, Founder at Change Please. Michael Hunter, Chief Growth Officer at Meatless Farm. And finally, Alberto Koza, Senior Global IT Manager at Nestle. So firstly, thank you to all our panel for joining us today. It's great for you to take some time out of your day to discuss what I think will be a very interesting discussion. And secondly, thank you to all our audience who joined us to watch this discussion over the next 45 minutes or so. So to kick us off, Sophie, it'd be great if you could just do a bit of scene setting for the topic for today.
Sure, thanks, Jonathan. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to be part of this discussion this afternoon, where we'll be exploring the big topic that is innovation and diversification. In our ever-changing world right now, innovation is, more than ever before, at the heart of everything we do with our clients and supply partners at Foodbuy. The speed of change throughout this crisis has been lightning fast in many ways, and keeping our finger on the pulse in terms of our consumer behaviour and client needs continues to be an absolute priority for us. Adaptability, creativity and flexibility have been key to survival and success over the past few months. And innovation and diversification isn't just about the next new shiny product, service or experience. It's also about looking at different ways of doing things and ways of working. Innovation has so many different meanings and can be seen in so many different ways. This pandemic has promoted a huge amount of creativity, which is great, and has proved in lots of cases that things that were seemingly impossible or hard to do previously have been possible if businesses think differently and act quickly. Lack of time to deliberate and quick decision making have driven fast-paced change throughout many organisations. And we've seen so much in our supply partners. Alcohol suppliers diversifying into hand sanitizer, new channels being unlocked online and direct to consumer, new delivery methods, the rollout of new technology. I honestly could go on and on, but I'll save that for another day. We have a great panel with us this afternoon, as Jonathan's already said, who are leading on innovation in their own ways and areas. They'll be sharing insight into what innovation means to them, how they've adapted throughout the crisis and what the future looks like, to hopefully give you all some nuggets of insight to help you think differently and remain agile in the fast-changing world that we all find ourselves in right now. So I'm really hoping that that's helped set the scene a little bit for the discussion this afternoon and what we're looking to explore. So I'll now pass back to Jonathan.
Thanks, Sophie. I think, as you say, it's been incredible. One of the things I've noticed over this crisis, how quickly so many businesses have changed their changing consumer behaviours that we find ourselves in. And indeed, so many different ways that you can innovate and diversify. It's not necessarily just the obvious way. And I think it'll be really interesting in the next half an hour or so, 45 minutes, to just understand from the suppliers we have on our panel how they've coped with that. So as we return to the new normal, or perhaps the new now as we begin to get to a level of normality, it's important to start off by understanding how consumer behaviour and expectations have changed. So I'd like to start with Jamal from Change Please. Jamal, what have you found as the sort of impact of consumer confidence, I guess, in social purchasing, an area, I guess, very close to Change Please?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So we've undoubtedly seen an increased sense of altruism during the lockdown period and also post-lockdown as well. people choosing to support the vulnerable, clapping the NHS, supporting the local charities, buying local, supporting social impacts and social enterprises like us. And also consumer behaviour during lockdown has changed considerably as well, with the sustainability and social value being kind of high on consumers' agenda. This has been extremely prevalent with younger generations. So a recent study towards the end of the lockdown period for Gen Zs and millennials showed that 50% of Gen Zs said they're influenced to buy a product if it does good, and 70% of millennials will spend 73% more for sustainable products. And at the beginning of the lockdown period, we saw a massive increase in consumers and members of the public supporting charities. And in the last month to 2 or 3 weeks, as the media narrative has changed and focused a lot more on the end of furlough, consumers and members of the public worrying about their job security, the impact on savings, and what the future insecurity means for them, we've seen that donations and philanthropic support towards charities reduce. But for social enterprises, that demand has drastically increased. And one of the reasons for that is if you're wanting to do good and make an impact to the world that you live in, but you're worried about disposable income, and you were going to buy a coffee anyway, you were going to buy a food product and AV equipment, and it's part of your disposable planning, then why not buy a social enterprise product that does good, helps the community, but isn't an increased spend, which a charitable donation would have been? And that's why I think the impact of consumer confidence is really going to focus towards social purchasing, social enterprise, and make a kind of big difference to the world that we live in, whilst people are buying the products they would have bought anyway.
Absolutely, and here's hoping that sort of behaviour continues. It's great to see that change, and how, as a community and a country, at least, we've got together to support those who need it most. Some big facts in there. I think there's 73% higher spend from young people to buy socially. So it's quite an incredible stat. So if we look at traceability, Rupert, how have you, what have you seen in the change in consumer interest in that area?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I think we've definitely seen through the pandemic that it's even more important than it was before to ensure that you know where your product's coming from. So if you are investing sustainably or socially, you definitely know where that money is going. So previous to the state we were in previously, traceability was less well known. I guess over the last 4 or 5 years, provenance has grown and grown over that period. But when the pandemic hit, I think it's accelerated that conversation even more. It's a mega trend and it's here to stay. So actually, all the people who are looking to invest sustainably and be sure that their money is going where they want to make sure that that's the case. I think before now, a lot of the talk around provenance and sustainability has been driven around a little bit of marketing talk rather than actually ensuring that that is the case. And I think that with Foodbuy going that extra mile by getting a scientific traceability solution on board that they have done with ourselves, it underpins all those efforts that Foodbuy has gone to source ethically, locally, sustainably, and whatever it may mean for them, and they've done so. So I think that, yeah, with the pandemic, that has been accelerated, and it's more on the agenda than it was, and it was growing massively. And I think on top of that as well, sustainable investors are growing as well, and there's a huge amount of money coming in to ensure that money being invested is going into sustainable philanthropic and local produce. So we help underpin all of those things that Foodbuy are trying to achieve at this moment.
Brilliant, and I know that's something in Foodbuy we're certainly keen to continue investing in and making sure we can truly be confident in the origin of all our food and where it comes from. So, Michael, how have you found kind of consumption in your area, the Meatless farm, change throughout COVID-19? Have you noticed similar changes like Jamal and Rupert?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's interesting because plant-based foods has been a trend that's been growing for a number of years. But as the start of the impact of COVID hit, from a Meatless farm perspective, we obviously stopped business within the QSR food service. That dropped off, but the retail side of it picked up. But if you look at the overall category, it's been growing around 50% on an MAT basis. So, you know, one of very few categories to be growing at such a rapid pace. On the back of that, we've been growing at 179%. So we're very fortunate in terms of growing at 3+ times the rate of the category. And in part, I believe there's a couple of reasons behind that, and the consumer shift in behavior. So I think as COVID hit, there was a pause from a consumer perspective in terms of understanding health. What am I eating? I'm cooking at home more often now. How do I make better choices versus just grabbing something quick on the go? And that actually fueled more plant-based consumption at home. I also think the environmental aspect, well publicized in terms of less traffic on the roads and people hearing birds and being out walking and doing more exercise. I think that definitely shifted the consumer perspective as well. But also, we launched a consumption target last year about reducing meat consumption. So if you take one meal out of your repertoire, we could reduce greenhouse gas by 8.4%. Which is equivalent to 16 million cars off the road. So I think you've got a massive shift in terms of the consumer behavior at home, thinking about what they eat differently. And I think that's here to stay. I think the whole reset in terms of what you eat, personal health, animal welfare, and environmental has been a significant shift that will now stay with consumers as we come back to the new normality.
I mean, it is incredible how quickly things have changed over such a small period of time. I think if we all thought about it 3-4 months ago, back in March, February time before the lockdown hit, to actually what's changed in the way consumers buy and where it comes from, and that sort of heightened awareness of that is quite incredible, actually. So to move on to our next topic and how we've innovated with this sort of changing consumer behaviour. Charlotte, how have you found the receptiveness to innovating throughout this crisis in your world in feeder?
Yeah, hi, thanks Jonathan. So to give everyone a bit of context on what we do at Feeder, we are a food tech platform which provides a full suite of in-office food solutions for businesses of all sizes. So whether that's more traditional hospitality and catering through our curated marketplace, or providing software for better management and uptake and loyalty with on-site restaurants within office spaces, or even offering a virtual canteen as well. So through our marketplace, being able to offer businesses who don't have an on-site restaurant facility a way to offer kind of a similar sort of service using our marketplace. Obviously, in light of COVID, things completely changed. People were no longer in their offices, people were at home, so we had to innovate, we had to pivot and pivot quickly. So one of the first things we launched 2 weeks into lockdown, I think it was home deliveries. So we know that we had people at home struggling to get deliveries to their door. The likes of Tesco's, Ocado, etc. had 6-week waiting times. We also, on the other side of our business, have this fantastic marketplace of around 150, 160 fantastic food providers who had to close their doors overnight. So we worked really hard within the first couple of weeks to pivot our model, and rather than delivering food into the office space, to start delivering that food to people at home as well. So that was one of the first big pivots that we had to take as a business. And then since then, we've been working very closely with Compass, who acquired us back in March, to actually launch a new in-office service, which is called Cloud Canteen, which is called Click and Collect. And that's really supporting businesses to reopen their on-site restaurant facilities in a very safe and efficient way. So really using digital innovation to make that easier, so people can use our software to access on-site restaurant menus and order and arrange a specific time to collect, so that we're minimizing footfall, you're minimizing the number of people within the canteen, no longer needing to transact, because you can transact via the Feeder app, and really just making that whole process safer, so that we're able to reopen in a safe way across sites across London.
Thanks, Charlotte. I think it really is a time for agile businesses at the moment. I think to be able to pivot and change your business model so quickly within a matter of weeks is quite phenomenal. I'm sure those businesses who are able to do that most effectively will certainly be well placed. So I guess the topic of innovation, as Sophie said at the start, comes in many different forms. So Oliver, how have you found consumer confidence change when it comes to the world of cleaning services and hygiene?
Thank you, Jonathan. I think, firstly, the perception of clean and hygiene has changed significantly. If we look back to 2019, in most sort of end user minds, as long as it sort of looked visibly clean or smelt of lemons, they were kind of satisfied. But now people think very carefully about how safe they feel in any environment, whether it's a workplace, whether it's home, whether it's leisure, and perception expectations have shifted dramatically. And really what this means for Compass Group, similar businesses, but also the high street, is how can you provide a level of confidence for consumers to feel comfortable and safe to enjoy their environments. Now, quick levels of innovation that we saw across multiple sectors, they fit roughly into three categories. You've got some of the soft measures, things like signage, stickers on the floor, the things that are very, very quick and easy to do. And that's very prevalent across most sectors. Then we've seen sort of harder measures. These range from perspex screens right through to in HVAC systems, high-level filtration systems that can remove 99.98% of all pathogens. But what we've seen is a growth in a pretty new market, which is about residual antimicrobial protection. So traditional cleaning is you clean once a day, potentially twice a day. Now, at those periods, you are providing very hygiene, secure, safe environments. But what we find in a typical office environment or any sort of well-used environment is we get dangerous spikes of potential cross-contamination between that cleaning cycle. So the biggest area of innovation we've seen, and we work very closely with a company called Zuno, it's a New Zealand-based company, is in providing treatments that actually invisibly bond to surfaces and provide ongoing either deactivation of viruses or kill of bacteria, so that you're bridging the gap between those cleaning cycles. And I think that's really the biggest area of growth we've seen in our business. So this was part of our business pre-COVID, but it was minute and probably really focused on food production and healthcare. So sectors that are traditionally very, very focused on hygiene as a subject. But now we're seeing this being used increasingly in education at the end of the last school year. We're seeing it in healthcare, but as businesses are starting to look forward to reopening, so it was restaurants, bars, then it was casinos, and now it's offices. People are using this in a way to create those hygiene secure environments. But going back to your question about confidence, the most important thing is to inform. So it's actually to tell people what you've done to create a hygiene secure environment. So only in that way will you actually be able to translate that in a way that end users can absorb and build up that level of confidence to make people feel, actually, do you know what, it's safe to leave my home, it's safe to get on that underground carriage, and it's safe to step into my office. But without that level of confidence building, we're not going to see UK industry and in particular the food services sector get back to anywhere near its 2019 levels.
I think it's a really interesting point around it's not just what you do, but how you communicate it. It's almost it's about building that confidence back up, and I think perhaps exemplified no more so than I think someone in the back of Jamal's office there roasting some coffee with a face shield on. Perhaps just exemplifies how the world has changed, perhaps. So if we I guess have a look at future technology and things that can help us in our consumer demand for greater traceability, authentication. Alberto, it'd be great if you could just talk to us a little bit about blockchain and how that can support in that.
Absolutely. Blockchain is one of the, let's say, magic technologies that are part of many digital transformation roadmaps out there. And what it brings to the table, it's not necessarily something that you cannot do without blockchain, but brings in an easier way, in a more transparent way, that allows different IT departments in the multiple companies to quickly and at a very low cost add the traceability and bring trust to the supply chain of not necessarily only food, but basically anything that you decide to design for blockchain. Of course, not all blockchain implementations are the same. There's some blockchain implementations that seems to be better, seems to attend the consumer demands a little bit better, and everything has to do with how you simplify at the end of this chain, how the consumers perceive blockchain and how they use blockchain. Mm-hmm. Is it intuitive? Is it easy to consume, to access, and to understand? And but it's certainly it's more than if we're having this conversation probably a year ago, I would say it's a very interesting and promising technology. But at the stage we are right now, and a lot because of COVID and the rapid shift that everybody mentioned that we just had in the last few months, blockchain has been catapulted to a status that's almost like a need, a requirement, if you want to get serious about traceability of your goods, and especially food supply chain. The other component that blockchain has been adding to the food supply chain is a component of safety, which is an important component when it comes to the times we're going through, and the feedback and the perception that we have from people using the many different blockchain solutions available there. In general, it's very good. It's very positive.
It's really like to agile businesses, acceptance of technology and embracing that to further our understanding and meet that consumer demand is clearly always going to be important, particularly as we come out of this. So if we move on to the topic of diversification, Charlotte, how have you seen kind of growth of pre-ordering takeaway apps, and I guess what does that mean to other businesses, and why do they need to offer that?
Yeah, great question. So I think kind of as we've called it, this new normal that we're entering into, and businesses start to reopen, as we've already said, that I think there are a few key things that businesses really need to think about. One is the safety of their employees, as we've already spoken about, and so how can you administer food services in the office in a safe way that abides by government regulations and recommendations. The second is flexibility. We know that we're not going to be at 100% capacity in offices probably for the foreseeable future, if ever. So how can businesses manage fluctuating headcounts? With traditional catering methods, we know that that's been a struggle, and so it's something that Feeder is able to offer through our cloud canteen system. It means individual ordering and pre-ordering on the day of delivery and then aggregating those orders. So it means that rather than having to preempt and assume, okay, we'll have X% of employees in the office on a given day, it doesn't matter, because it's the employees themselves who are ordering if they're in. So we've utilised our tech to be able to support businesses with that flexibility piece. And I think around the cost efficiency as well, with that, it means that you're not over ordering or under ordering, you're ordering for the number that are going to be on site. So there's a really big piece in diversifying how you provide food in an office space in that way. I think something else as well that's going to become more important and has been kind of growing in popularity over the last couple of years or so is the quality of food, nutritionally balanced meals and things like that, and that's a big pillar of Feeder's business as well. So we really focus on the nutritional content and the balance of meals that we offer through our platform, and providing educational tools on our platform to give individuals more access to that nutritional data, whether it's macros, sourcing information, etc. So I think there are some key hurdles that businesses need to consider around the safety, the flexibility, and the cost impact. And I think it's important that we're looking at tech solutions, as we've just been discussing, Feeder being one of them, blockchain being another, of ways to bring those innovations into the office space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to hear how, I guess, you met the consumer demand by offering more information and answering those questions that without almost consumers having to ask for it, providing it, and therefore providing confidence. And I think it's always, certainly in my role in supply chain, forecasting right now is challenging to say the least, just because the level of uncertainty we have. So I think any tools that help with that or help manage your cost base in that background are always going to be well placed in the market. And for, I guess, from a view where Sophie mentioned at the start about where we've got alcohol companies now producing hand sanitizer, and there's been quite a lot of coverage in the media over recent months about how non-traditional or new players are moving into their non-traditional markets. And Oliver, how have you found that, particularly in the world of cleaning products and over the last few months?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I mean, two ways to answer this, really. I mean, as I hinted earlier, we're seeing interest for hygiene as a specialist science-led service being embraced by sectors outside of their traditional heartland, being sort of healthcare, food production, etc. So across leisure, business and industry, as I hinted, restaurants, casinos, bars, these are sectors that didn't purchase these services. So obviously they're now trying to find sustainable ways to integrate that into their operating and budgeting models in a way not that they can do for 4 weeks, but that they can do for the next 9, 12 months plus. So that's a real challenge for those sectors. But in real terms, this crisis has created its own new sector. So antimicrobial services, which, as I say, were a tiny little line in our budgeting previously, would probably barely be enough to buy myself dinner at the end of the month. All of a sudden, this has become a fairly serious market within the UK and globally. And you're seeing products that already existed starting to have to find new ways to scale up to unprecedented levels. I mean, these companies are experiencing 3,000, 5,000% growth since February. So there's been real challenges in how they scale up production distribution effectively, and the ones who have done that are the real winners. But the reality is this market did not exist. Even in their specialist target markets, people weren't buying at volume. Whereas all of a sudden, this new antimicrobial marketplace has sprung to life. What you are finding, though, sadly, is that there are a lot of companies that are registered in April 2020. So there's a lot of rogue actors, and we all see, adverts on LinkedIn, et cetera, and probably getting 10 emails a day about this sort of thing. So I think what it puts a lot of pressure on, sort of senior players in this market taking a real leadership role, because there isn't stringent regulation other than kind of the EN standards for the products themselves, but actually the service delivery. And there's a real focus at the minute for myself and other business leaders who are doing this right and delivering for a very real need for the market, is in ensuring that we continue to have good relationships with testing laboratories, etc., so that we're providing a very robust service that gives client organizations the ability to inspire confidence in their people, because that's what's going to help all the schools come back in September. That's what's going to help bring tens of thousands of people back into buildings in places like Canary Wharf, London and Manchester and Birmingham. Because without that, we're going to continue to see 15, 20% occupation of buildings at best. And in that situation, we all suffer. So, to summarise, we've seen hygiene being very increasing importance in more markets, but critically, the growth of antimicrobial protection as its own sector will continue. But it's important that it professionalises itself in the absence of government-led regulation, so that companies, clients, buyers actually have good, high-quality options in a competitive marketplace to find the right solution for their business and to help them get back up and running as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. And I think kind of that leadership role that you mentioned there for those established players and driving this forward, and building new categories. It is just gives you the scale of the change and the activity that's needed to be done to instill that confidence to, in the case of cleaning and hygiene, to open the doors and to get people back to this new normality that we keep talking about. Thanks, Oliver. So if we move the conversation on to sustainability and social value and transparency, this is something that's certainly been gathering momentum well before COVID-19, indeed something close to us at Foodbuy, where we pledged to spend a further £5 million over the next 12 months with these companies. But as Jamal mentioned in one of the earlier topics, the focus and demand from customers is changed even further in the last few months. But if we start this conversation with Rupert, how are you, I guess, ensuring transparency from farm to fork, and in particular, how are you doing that with Foodbuy?
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah. Well, actually, I'd like to say that stealing a well-known expert's point of view, that actually we're looking at. Obviously, it's farm to fork delivery, but fork to farm transparency or traceability. So once you've got it, where did it come from, and are you sure where it came from? So to give a bit of background on what we have been working on for the last 4 years with Foodbuy is once the Horsegate scandal broke, I think that Foodbuy, it raised the level for everyone to understand actually transparency is super important and knowing where your product comes from. So we engaged with yourselves and started building up data on where you were sourcing from in your core products, so meat, fish, aquaculture, dairy, and also moving into fresh produce as well. So over those 4 years, we've built up an understanding of that, that where you are sourcing from, and being able to enable you to, by using forensic science, be able to verify that that is the case. You are getting them from where you aim to be getting them from, and that enables you to make claims around it, whether it's a locally sourced claim and whether it's an ethical claim, as we discussed previously. So we've been working on that side of things with you over those last 4 years. And initially we were working with paper traceability and other forms like that. And as Alberto mentioned, obviously blockchain is coming to the form, and that doesn't change for us what we're doing, because we're there to authenticate whatever other traceability is in place. So validate if the blockchain is correct, because it's only as good as the information that's put in it. Obviously, by actually ensuring that the product you have at the end is what it says it is, that validates all that other hard work that Foodbuy is going to ensure that they know where their product comes from. So I think jointly we've been working on those core products, but as we expand into a lot of the sustainable products, ESG related, we've been doing a significant amount of work with coffee and cocoa, palm oil, and that's obviously core elements of what Foodbuy is hoping to achieve in those large commodity products, because from a sustainability perspective, certainly an ESG perspective, they're the ones that are driving a lot of conversation at the moment. So the journey has changed from those core products into the more sustainable products, and I think whilst we continue to build across the whole set, that's a key area for us to work on going forward.
Brilliant, thank you, Rupert. Jamal, why, fairly direct question, why is supporting social so important?
I think when we decide to buy social, we're deciding to help the world that we live in. If we can make it as easy for consumers, for companies to buy a social product and have an impact at the same time that they would buy a product they would normally purchase anyway, then that can have an exponential impact on the world that we live in. And if you're an organization like Foodbuy and Compass, and you have the purchasing power that they have, you have an ability to have an incredible impact on the world that we live in. If you're able to help the homeless, to help people who have got mental health issues, victims of domestic abuse, people with autism, I was about to say altruism there, but people with autism, supporting communities in Africa. And there's so many challenges there's so many challenges in the world that we face, which social enterprises and social businesses can really have a huge impact in changing. And as long as the quality of the product, the price, the convenience to purchase that product is as good, if not better, than the social enterprise competitors that exist in the marketplace, then it should be a no-brainer to have a social impact whilst purchasing a product. And I personally believe that pre-coronavirus, I came into Foodbuy at the beginning of this year when we did a talk about social enterprise, And we said at the time, you know, social enterprise in the next 5-10 years is going to be the future of business. And we don't want to be called social enterprises. We just want to be called businesses because it's going to become so normal. And I think what we've seen is that Foodbuy as an organisation are really leading the way in social procurement. And I think they were the first procurement company in the country that signed up to the government's Buy Corporate Social Challenge, where they committed to a huge amount of their yearly spend towards social businesses. So if organisations replicate the work that Foodbuy are doing, led by Ian Murphy, Sophie Daniels, Laura Neville, then we can have a huge impact on the world that we live in if that kind of impact is replicated by other procurement companies.
Absolutely, and certainly something that's very close to our hearts, as mentioned on the as part of that group, and I think something we talk about very regularly and how we move our supply chain in that direction. Michael, why is offering plant-based alternatives so important for those in the food service industry?
No, I think it's a very valid and topical point. I think if you only look at the category growth that I indicated at over 50%, it just demonstrates that meat plant-based alternatives have become mainstream. If you look at the fact that 32% of households have bought plant-based foods in the last year, and that number only continues to increase. We've done some research that indicates that 37% of consumers would expect more plant-based foods on menus when we come out of lockdown and into this time period that we're in now. So I think the whole shift of the awareness of the environment, the awareness of your own health and well-being and choices of food that you eat become really important, as well as the impact that you can have on the environment. So I think when you add all that up together, the shift from the consumer's expectation of not just finding plant-based foods in retail, but made easy for me in terms of eating out, in terms of restaurant and hospitality sector, is really important. And I think the role that we have to play is bringing that education that these products are easy to use. There's a lot of versatility behind it. You can make great pub grub, or you can make family favorites, whether it's lasagna or chili non carne or bangers and mash, as well as extending it out into Asian-inspired foods and flavors is really important. But also, I think there's an education from our side as well, in terms of from a user perspective, these foods are actually really easy to use. In some instances, they cook quicker than meat, so there's a time saving. They're not more expensive, and so the offer that you've got for your consumer is actually parity price to what would have been a normal meat product. But also the fact that we can help reduce waste, increase cost effectiveness, and all of these really important factors when somebody may be operating with a limited menu or a smaller team. We've got to make sure that we're coming forward with, innovation, whether it's free flow mince or whether it's ready-made bolognese or cannelloni that can be easily fitted into a menu in a repertoire. So so I think all in all, consumers are expecting it, and it doesn't matter where they are eating out or shopping.
Brilliant. I think your point there about making sure these products are easy to use, and it's almost that scare factor, I guess. When someone moving from, who always has a meat sausage and move into a non-meat sausage, I guess once you get over that barrier, though, and I guess it's a self-imposed barrier, you can really see how the other benefits are just going to start outweighing it, and it's no surprise, I guess, those growth figures that you talk about. So finally, on this topic, Alberto, what's the importance of traceability, perhaps for you, particularly at Nestle? Alberto?
Yeah. Well, to begin with, the traceability for us is it's important because it's a consumer demand or requirement. They want to have transparency. They want to see from where what they're consuming is coming from, and they want to make sure that what's on the package, what's on the labels, it actually matches the reality, and that's for one. The second importance of traceability is actually has to do with food safety. If there's any problems in the chain and a recall needs to be made, we want to make sure that we do that in the shortest amount of time possible and in the safest way possible. And what blockchain and advanced traceability allows you to do is to actually pinpoint that a lot faster. So those two components alone justify any investment in traceability. It's really about putting the consumer at the center of it, more important than anything that we may need traceability for internally. And there are other needs for traceability internally. There's information that can be obtained out of traceability that can be used for building intelligence out of your supply chain. And us and our competitors and other companies in the food business, I have been using that in the last months, and even more so now because of everything and the rapid shifts that we see in consumer trends, leveraging that information that is in your traceability database, being on blockchain or being elsewhere. But certainly being on blockchain helps a lot to obtain this information faster because it's a common database.
Mm-hmm. I think your points there, your two points on ensuring food safety, make sure the label meets reality. I think we've seen those instances that go big in the media, but actually it's not just about that. This is about far more than that, and as consumers expect this, making sure that we're confident all the time that we're achieving those factors, and clearly blockchain is a good way of doing it. And I think hopefully we can get from that is how important working with social enterprises, adopting new products into the market and traceability, how important they are certainly to Foodbuy and our clients. So moving into the last couple of topics, and I'm going to ask these in a fairly quick fire question as we start looking to the future and future development. So appreciate if you could perhaps sum this up in for the next sort of 4 speakers in about 20-30 seconds. So Charlotte, if I start with you, what's next for Feeder?
Yeah, so 2 big focuses for us. One being continuing to push on the nutritional labelling and education. We've seen the government's Better Health campaign come out recently, so there is a push for that. And so I think continuing to be a leader within that space and driving that. And also home deliveries. So, we want to continue serving food to where our customers are. So that's, employees within businesses. And if we're moving into this flexible working environment, then we need to be able to serve our employees in their offices, but also in their homes too.
Brilliant. Oliver, what's next for HPS?
Yeah, it's continuing to innovate, taking a very science-based approach to hygiene. Getting the right levels of equipment and kit into our frontline teams, so they can, as they use the science to demonstrate hygiene secure environments to clients and end users. It's innovating our marketing, and I mean end user marketing, not client marketing. So it's actually investing in the things that people are going to see, that are going to give them confidence, and actually using innovative ways to help build that level of confidence for the site end users in whatever sector they will be. And finally, it's playing our part in reopening the UK. This week, our teams are all over the casino sector. 4 weeks ago, it was the high street restaurant and pub sector. In end of August, it will be primary schools and secondary schools. And as we look towards the end of the year, mostly January, but in September, it will be corporate offices. And actually, as I say, playing that role in creating hygiene secure environments, making people feel that they're in a hygiene secure environment, and making sure we get as many people back into safe, secure environments as possible.
Brilliant. So in 20 seconds, what's next for the Meatless farm?
Yeah, 2 things. Innovation. So moving rapidly forward with fish-style products, chicken-style products, pastry-style products. So anything that you would find a meat product, you can have a like-for-like meat alternative product. And then secondly, mass market awareness. So helping people understand that change tastes good and that it's easy to swap to a plant-based meat alternative.
Brilliant. And finally, Alberto, what's next next for blockchain?
Well, okay, so that's a hard one to answer because there's so much going on and the technology is so new. But I think what's next for blockchain is really to increase adoption to begin with. The more players we have, the more value you get out of blockchain, and also demystify blockchain to the receiver, to the consumer, to the person at the end of the chain that's actually getting a food product and scanning with the cell phone and actually understanding how it all connects together, because that's the goal of blockchain. And there is still a long road ahead. The technology has really advanced in the last few months, but there's still a lot more to come, and people to perceive blockchain as something that brings value, and how the companies that are employing blockchain bring that value to the consumers, to the receivers. That's what's next in this industry for sure.
Brilliant. So clearly some exciting times ahead for all of you. So as we come to the end of the discussion, I just want to spend next couple of minutes just to get 30 seconds, no more than that, from each of the panelists, just to give up some of your closing thoughts, or perhaps something that's resonated with you. So Rupert, if we start with you.
Sure. I just want to touch on what Alberto was saying again. I think that for traceability, transparency, to be able to substantiate sustainability claims and everything that's come to light with COVID, I think a combination of factors, so obviously a blockchain or a QR code-led system with being able to scientifically prove your product, the combination of different types of traceability together enable you to make those sustainability claims, understand your supply chain, and therefore support your clients in the right way, which what Foodbuy always does is be innovative in that space.
Brilliant. Thank you. Charlotte?
Yeah, I think my key takeaway, I think, would be that the innovation is there. You know, it's been going on, and it's been going on, you know, before COVID as well. I think COVID has just sped things up. But if you have a problem as a business or an individual within a business, the most likely solution, you know, there is a business who is offering you a solution for that problem. So it would just be to do your research, and you know, we're all out here trying to adapt and change and innovate as best we can, and that seems to be across the board. You know, food, cleanliness, traceability, etc. So it's an exciting time to be in the space, I think.
Brilliant. Oliver?
Yeah, I think whether we find a vaccine or beat COVID, the expectation of end users and the confidence they will need to feel will not change. So whatever you do in whatever industry or sector you're operating in, you need to find a strategy that is operationally and commercially sustainable. I say not something you can do for 6 weeks, it's something you can do for 6, 9, 12 months and still meet your business objectives. Because that level of expectation, that needs to create confidence in a genuinely safe environment, is not going anywhere. So build a strategy, whether it's hard, soft, or more innovative antimicrobial measures that you can continue to do and do well. And that would be my final thought.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Jamal?
Yeah, for me, it's the ability for social enterprise to have a huge change in the world that we live in, but also to, going back to what Berta was saying about tapping blockchain, and we use blockchain to purchase coffee, and it's dramatically changed the amount of money farmers earn. It reduces fraud, corruption. We can even track the pollution trail that the coffee emits when it's on its way over to the UK. So being able to use technology to have a more sustainable world, and also having a full closed loop system where from where the bean comes from all the way to the cup, or the grounds in our case, can have a huge impact on the world that we live in, and looking at that full supply chain.
Absolutely. Michael?
Yeah, I think despite everything that we've been through, consumers still crave entertainment, hospitality, great eating experiences. And I think, you know, working with operators and with brands is a real opportunity for working together differently, thinking differently, and coming up with new experiences. Because I think if there's one area that will provide confidence for the whole United Kingdom in terms of coming back, it's going to be the hospitality sector.
Absolutely. And Alberto?
I think what we need to focus on now is really to wait for the noise to calm down and understand what are the trends that are here to stay, and what are the trends that are just temporary because of that, and be able to use all the technology that we all have available these days to harness what we need to harness and move forward with that. There's fundamental shifts that happen because of the current pandemic, but also there were trends that were already growing, and the pandemic just accelerated a little bit further. It's how we make it all sustainable, and we keep this good momentum for what we need to keep the good momentum and move it forward and take advantage of that. So we're talking about traceability blockchain. That's certainly one of them, but there's many other trends in digital transformation that we could leverage to bring products and make the food consumption experience different to the consumers.
Absolutely. So thank you to all our panelists for your thoughts and feedback there. If I could just ask Sophie, perhaps just to give some final thoughts from the Foodbuy perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I think the discussion's been great, and it's been good to kind of hear everyone's perspective on the topic that is innovation and diversification. I guess my key message to wrap up would be remain agile, embrace change because it's happening quickly. But if there's anything that Foodbuy can do to help you, then please get in touch, because we'd love to help.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So I hope you've enjoyed today's discussion. It has gone on a little longer than originally expected, but I guess that's just testament to the topic. Clearly, innovation and diversification is here to stay, and I think the rapid pace that the things have changed in the last few months compared to perhaps how long things may have taken pre-COVID-19. It means an exciting world ahead, I guess, for where we may move forward. So thank you again to all our panelists for joining us today, and thank you to our audience. If you do have any feedback, please feel free to drop us an email at info@foodbuy.co.uk. But just leaves me to say thank you all again, and we'll hope to see you at our next Foodbuy Futures event.